It's time for Media Meltdowns, and Australia's 60 Minutes has dedicated almost 20 minutes airing an interview with Rosie O'Donnell, where she opened up about her severe case of Trump Derangement Syndrome, a case so bad that it caused her to flee America all the way to Ireland when Donald Trump was duly elected. And Rosie O'Donnell admits that no one's stopping her over there for a photo or an autograph.
Best with celebrities. If they see you, they go, hey, or they'll say, welcome. Nobody says, can I have a picture? Can I have an autograph?
Nobody.
They literally want to welcome you. And, you know, when I
wonder why that might be, but with a straight face, Rosie O'Donnell paints this delusional picture that she doesn't like to fight publicly, and she's currently in what she calls a calm period of her life.
For me, fighting and arguing is not the way I want to live or entertain. It's not the way I want to make money. It's you know, even though I, when pushed, will go there, I don't like to go there. And I'm trying in my old age to keep it all calm and to be around as long as I can.
Are you sure about that?
I think so. Did it ring untrue to you?
Well, I do think you make headlines a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yes. Well, when it comes to democracy dying in America, I'm not silent. And when it comes to the president right now and what his actions are and who he is innately, I am not quiet.
There it is, that lie that America is no longer a democracy, and she made that claim several times throughout the interview. But this so-called calm Rosie, who claims she's fighting for democracy, just last week went on the Jim Acosta show to express her disappointment that Donald Trump wasn't killed during the assassination attempt in Butler.
And his assassination attempt, a man died during that assassination attempt. Yeah. A man died.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him.
Yeah.
And his ear miraculously healed. Ladies and gentlemen, will anyone in the news ever say that without couching it? Yeah. His ear miraculously regenerated. People, what else do you need?
I mean, what a class act. There's more of Rosie's so-called calm era. Here she is warning about the safety of the world under Donald Trump.
Well, listen, it's very sad to me what's happening in the United States. Yeah. It's overwhelmingly depressing, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And I fear for the safety of the world.
Yeah.
And he is a dangerous man.
Yeah.
And he's trying to shut up any dissent. He's trying to erase Black culture, gay culture. He's trying to make a white separatist nation. And we cannot allow him to do that.
I agree with you.
Unhinged.
1,000%.
Joining us now is Adam Crichton, Chief Economist at the IPA. Adam, it is great to see you again. I'm sorry for putting you through that, but we've heard a lot from Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, she sat down on 60 Minutes insisting that she's calm, yet, of course, claiming several times that democracy is dying in America. And she states that as if it's fact. And she was pressed on her claims that she's, you know, not really calm. But she wasn't really pressed on this claim of hers, and she's not alone in making this claim that democracy is dying. But what's your reaction to all of this? What do you make of Rosie O'Donnell opening up to Australians about her TDS?
Well, look, I just feel sorry for her, really. She comes across as a lunatic, I think, surely. The claims she makes are just factually untrue. I mean, she said something there about a white ethno state or something, and yet Donald Trump did the best amongst Black voters in the United States, I think, for many generations for a Republican. Yes. And then she also said something about hating gays. Well, he's the first president to hire a gay Treasury Secretary. So these claims are just completely ridiculous. And sadly, people do have this TDS. And there is this belief on the left, amongst extreme elements of the left, that he's trying to create some sort of dictatorship. But there's just no evidence of that. There's not a dictatorship in the US. He won the election fair and square. He won 7 swing states. So she might not like that outcome, but that is the reality, I'm afraid, and she's probably going to have to get used to it for maybe another 6 years if JD Vance does end up succeeding Donald Trump as president.
Yes, and I'm sure she's not going to slow down with some of her comments. We'll keep playing them here just to torture everybody. But look, on a more serious note, of course, we have to turn to what is the biggest story in the United States at the moment, which should have been the biggest story weeks ago, this horrific murder of a Ukrainian refugee, Irina Zarutska, allegedly murdered by a man who'd been arrested 14 times, and of course the media was silent. And now the coverage on outlets such as CNN is just absolutely appalling, describing the outrage that is being expressed as racist. And here is White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller blasting the Democrats for these catch and release policies of theirs.
And then you look at that video that chills our very souls out of Charlotte, that beautiful young woman stabbed to death, murdered savagely on a subway, just trying to get home from work, fleeing war, only to run into a Democrat war zone here in our country. That monster, 14 prior arrests in and out. The Democrat policies of catch and release for barbarians and savages is truly an act of terror, Sean, against the American people. It cannot be explained unless you deeply, fundamentally hate America.
Adam, I want to get your thoughts on the media in a moment, but also just Stephen Miller's points just there. He really has a point, and there's a lot of focus on the fact that this man was able to, well, he was arrested more than a dozen times before this attack took place.
Well, yes, look, and just 14 times, and I think some of the crimes were violent crimes, and yet he was still out. So this story is huge indeed. There are so many facets and aspects to it, but certainly the questions about the judicial system is a grave one and a serious one. I note the governor of the relevant state, North Carolina, has taken almost 2 weeks to say anything about this, including the state's attorney general, because they are complicit. It's their judiciary, it's their judges, and the judge let this guy out. And now this has happened. I mean, it's shocking. I think there needs to be a massive review. But the bigger question here, of course, is what this says about the US media. I mean, it's a very dark day for the US media. It's a massive humiliation. I think even for the most left-wing journalists on these big broadsheets over there, they must be ashamed, because it's shown them up as what they are. They are propagandists, and they only publish the news that they want people to know about. And they only, basically, when it comes to crime, the only crime they want to know about is basically white crime on black.
Yes.
And that is just so clearly obvious, so patently obvious. I mean, here's a story, with a video. It's horrific. It's shocking. I mean, by the standards of the media, it should have been a huge story straight away, but there was no reporting on it. And the first time I thought, I saw this last Friday on Twitter, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be huge. And then one day went past, still nothing from the mainstream media. 2 days went past, still nothing. And then, of course, it just got so big on social media that they had to report on it in the end through clenched teeth, obviously. But that made it even worse, in my view, because they didn't even care much about the crime. It was about how the crime supposedly radicalised MAGA. I mean, it just made them look even worse. And, of course, the New York Times, in its one piece, and of course it had about 300 pieces, I think, on the white guy, Daniel Penny, who accidentally killed a guy on a train in New York trying to protect someone.
Yes.
They had hundreds of stories on that, but zero stories on this, except for one. And then in that one story, it was black with a capital B and white with a small W. I mean, it's just, they just basically, they were racist. Their reporting is racist, reverse racist against white people. There is no other way to put it.
And it's completely obvious, as you say, the media, it picks and chooses the stories or murders that they want to cover based on a narrative. And it's interesting, of course, with George Floyd's death, that went viral. There was wall-to-wall media coverage over there. And of course, as a result of George Floyd's death, there were then protests in the street. They turned into wild riots. People were uploading black signatures to their Instagram pages. We saw people in Hollywood filming themselves crying, but silence, completely different story for this Ukrainian refugee.
Yeah, and also it's just worth pointing out too, with those riots, the so-called George Floyd riots, they were fanned and fueled by the mainstream media, right? They weren't really organic, right? So the media has a hand in those. So they're very powerful still. They can make people angry and furious about certain things, and they only choose to do that when there's a crime of a white person on a black person.
Yeah,
that's almost universally the case. And when I was in the US for 4 years, this is not the only case of this. I'd see all sorts of local crimes and think, gosh, that's a horrific crime, and it's generally a black person or a white person. I remember one distinctly. A group of black youths ran over a white cyclist on purpose, and they filmed it all and laughed about it. It was just shocking, and yet there was no reporting on it in the mainstream press, none. But just imagine for 1 second if the colour of the skin had been reversed. Just imagine, it would have been a huge story for months. And I think the journalists at these publications really need to look at themselves. You know, what is their purpose? Are they reporting the news or is it propaganda?
No.
You know, just choose one, please.
It's propaganda, and I think, as you say, they've been exposed now. Everyone can see absolutely right through this, and it also goes to the power of platforms such as X. You know, so many people are on social media now, and because of I suppose even conservative influences, even Elon Musk was talking about this horrific murder days ago. People were actually able to know what's going on, and then also realising, hang on, this isn't being reported on at all. Not in the New York Times, not on CNN, not ABC. All those places have only finally caught up. Now, of course, it's reached the point where Trump has been speaking about it, but it's absolutely shocking and it's just obvious. Now, moving on to the Democrats, this photo is going viral of Bernie Sanders, AOC and Mamdani. They really are the stars of the left right now, which says so much. But Adam, it's interesting, there are reports that AOC's campaign has reportedly spent thousands of dollars at ritzy hotels while headlining the Fighting Oligarchy tour with Bernie Sanders. Of course, AOC's campaign shelled out apparently $3,500 alone at the Vidara Hotel and Spa in Las Vegas during the tour. And it's no surprise, really. It just reminds me of Bernie Sanders refusing to fly commercial, insisting that he had to get private jets while he fights oligarchy.
Yeah, certainly. Look, I think more and more Americans are seeing the level of hypocrisy here and double standards, and whatever the Democrats are doing right now, it's not working. I mean, Trump basically wiped them out in the presidential election. And, sure, President Trump himself doesn't have the best popularity rating, but if you look at the Democrats' popularity rating at the moment in the US, it's lower than it's been for decades. I think the approval rating for the party is something like 30%. So, there's lots of Democrats out there hoping that in the midterm elections next year that Republicans do badly. But I think actually the Republicans could do quite well because whatever the Democrats are serving up, most Americans are not liking it. They still have quite extreme social policies. Their foreign policy is very confused, and there's so much hypocrisy about wealth. I mean, the top 10 seats by wealth in the US Congress are all held by Democrats, which is quite funny, and yet they make out that they're the champion of the poor. This is no longer the case, right? This is no longer the case. If any party is a champion of the poor in the US right now, it's more the Republican Party than the Democrats. Absolutely.
Look, let's talk about what's going on in the UK. Comedian Graham Lanham has lashed out at UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for being a weak leader. Now, he was arrested at Heathrow Airport last week for the tweets that he posted on X, and he told Megyn Kelly that he can no longer relax while he's in the UK, and he's always kind of looking over his shoulder. Take a listen to this.
And these men have the police wrapped around their fingers. Not just me who's been arrested. There's been, several dozens of women arrested in the UK over the last 8 years. And again, these women are suffering in silence because no one with any authority will stand up to them. Keir Starmer came into power saying that he would end the culture wars, but he hasn't. He's just hid from them.
I mean, this story of a comedian arrested over tweets, it's gone round the world. It's unbelievable when you think about free speech. Where is it in the UK? Now, these comments also come as Keir Starmer's approval rating back at home in the UK is among the lowest of any Western leader, according to the latest poll. And of course, reform is right ahead.
Just on Keir Starmer, he's probably the worst Prime Minister the UK's had in the last 60 years. So his disapproval rating rather, is very well deserved, I would say. I mean, it's not only the attacks on free speech, which are actually horrific. I mean, there are more people now being arrested for online in the UK than in Russia, far more. And I just hope Australians are looking at these so-called online safety laws, which give the UK police the power to arrest people for racist remarks or whatever. I mean, sure, we don't like racist remarks, but should people really be arrested for them and go to jail? I think most Australians would say no, and certainly most Britons too. But that is the law of the land over there now. And it's very scary because it's only going to get worse. They'll be reading your private messages. They'll be reading your WhatsApp messages soon. That's what governments would like to do, right? So it's a totalitarian mindset. And, the sad part for me is that the UK and the West is becoming more and more like China, not the other way around. China was meant to become more like us, but we are definitely becoming more like them. That is totally clear. Our governments are getting bigger and more powerful all the time. And the UK is at the vanguard of that, very sadly, because it was the home of free speech, at least at one point. So it's very sad to see. He deserves his low rating. And then, we can talk about immigration over there too, which is completely out of control. And British people are fed up with that.
Isn't it? And we were seeing the protests, people taking to the streets, and of course they are. When you look at the numbers, more than 50,000 since Starmer's been in position of power, you know, what that does to a country, no wonder you're seeing mothers, you're seeing women of all ages going out and protesting, because there's also been, reports of sexual assaults being taking place. It's horrific.
Well, you know, one stat's amazing. So in 2016, the British people voted to leave the EU. And the main reason they voted to leave the EU was basically to lower immigration. They were sick of all the high immigration. And so what happened since that vote? No, immigration went up dramatically. So both parties, Labor and the Tories, let in, since 2021, about 4 million new people into the UK.
Wow.
And of course, they weren't from the EU. They were from Africa, the Middle East and Asia. So people got less immigration from the EU and they got a hell of a lot more from everywhere else in the world. And quite often those cultures coming into the UK weren't as great a fit, shall we say. And yes, there are riots now in the UK, and I think the country's in a crisis. And, you know, frankly, neither party has been willing to do much about it. And so, as you pointed out earlier, the Reform Party is now the most popular party in the UK. And if those polls are true at the next election, then the Tories and Labor will be wiped out.
Yeah, isn't it interesting to see? And, you know, you look at what's going on in the UK, it makes so much sense that Nigel Farage is ahead in the polls. Adam Crichton, thank you so much for your time. Brilliant to speak to you, as always.
Thanks very much.